Hey y'all, we are here to review The Real Housewives of Miami, Season 5, Episode 2. And it's okay. Not not much. The premiere was fantastic. This one was like fine. Like it gave me like some bits and pieces, but it wasn't like woo, but we'll talk about it. We start the episode and Nicole is getting ice cream with her son. He's so super cute. And she's having this like FaceTime chat with GUERDY to basically plan like a little, what she call it, like a champagne and oysters thing, which sounds fun. So they're gonna link up. She calls it with like with the girls, like with their group. So her and GUERDY and Adriana and then and Julia. So that'll be fun. We move on and we see Adriana going to Lisa's boyfriend's house, and it is the house that Adriana used to live in, and they're showing like the renovations and stuff that he did, which is fun. And he talks a little bit about, well, they talk a little bit about the fact that he's been mentioning like moving in with Lisa, which is very abrupt and very interesting because she's still married. And I said last episode, I still don't really know about this relationship. Like the way that Lisa explains it to me is so, it's off-putting, so it makes me look at it weird, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. While they're there, we're seeing Alexia and Larsa and Kiki, and they're working out. And, after they work out, of course, they're going to sit down and have a Kiki. And I like that they're asking about the Todd thing because it is weird, and I did think it was off-putting for Alexia to just kind of jump out and say, oh, but we're not getting a divorce. So I think that she kind of put that bug in people's ear because it's like, well, why would you say that? So that's kind of the question. And Kiki's like, she feels like there's more to the story with this Todd thing, which I would definitely have to agree. Like I said last episode, I think like, all the weird stuff that they were kind of saying about Nicole's man last season, was his name Anthony, kind of feels like now, because even Todd was kind of one of the aggressors of that, kind of feels like now Todd's coming out looking a little weird, but that's just my personal opinion. They're also asking her, like, obviously the Anthony thing, like I just mentioned, but they're like, would there have been anything else that Todd didn't want to be around? Because Alexia's really being vague and not telling them why he didn't want to be there. And so they're like, who would have been the issue? And they ask, is it Adriana? And she's like, no, there's no issue with Adriana. But Kiki's like, well, there has to be an issue with Adriana. And she brings up the conversation that Adriana had on the way to Alexia's event last episode, where she was saying basically, Alexia thinks she's better than the girls, and it's because of financial status, but she only has that financial status because of Todd. Even in hearing that, though, Alexia didn't get super turned up. It bothered me because obviously Alexia and Adriana had that lunch last week, and I feel like Adriana should have said that to Alexia's face at the lunch. But it didn't seem to rile Alexia up too much. But, she basically, I guess her whole thing is she feels like, Adriana doesn't want to see her happy, and Adriana would have preferred it if they were getting a divorce and if there were bad things going on there in their marriage. I have to, this is only my second season watching them and seeing their dynamic, so I'm not going to doubt that at all, because Adriana did say some interesting things later. But, I'll have to get into it a little bit more to see if that's what I really think that it is, because honestly, I don't know. While they're there, Marisol calls and she's planning a gay brunch. I'm not super excited about the name of it. Not that it's offensive or anything, but it's kind of abrasive. Like, I feel like it's in my face and it's just a bit, I feel like we could have done a different name, but it's called the Gay Brunch, and she's inviting everybody but Julia, the gay one in the group, and because she says, she surmises that Julia doesn't like her. I just wish, honestly, at this big age that we would use our words a little bit more. Like, just because somebody holds you accountable and calls you out on something doesn't automatically leapfrog over to, well, they don't like me. Sounds very sandbox, but we're talking about Marisol. And now, with Lisa and Adriana, Julia has showed up and they're, kikiing at the house. And I do like because it does seem like this group can definitely be divided. We definitely saw that last season. And so you get the group, you get the LARSA and the Alexia and the Kiki and typically the Lisa. And then on the other side, you'll get like the Julia and the Adriana and the GUERDY. And I apologize if I missed anybody, but I don't think that I did. Oh, and then Nicole on the other side. I like Nicole. No shade, no tea. And so I like to see, the only one that tends to cross over for me is Lisa. I feel like Lisa is pretty level headed, and I think that she can see things from both sides. I honestly feel like she tends to agree with things that are said on the Nicole, GUERDY, Adriana side of things. I think that she sees the toxicity on the Marisol, ALEXIA side of things, but that's more so her crew anyway. I don't know. So, say all that to say, I enjoy seeing her film with the other side of the group because it just shows like an openness to kind of do a crossover, and it's not so like talls and the smalls of the group type of thing. Julia comes in and she's explaining how she's kind of been all over the place, and they're like, why? Because Alexia's party. And she's like, no, not because of that, but that was crazy. And they talk briefly about why she was so turned up at Marisol, and she's like, at the end of the day, like, she feels like Marisol starts rumors and hides her hands. I don't know if rumors is what I would use from what we see on the show, but I do feel like she gets things started. Like Lisa said, she stirs the pot. I would definitely say that. And then I don't even know that I would say she hides her hands. I think that she is just kind of like the villain in this story. It's just kind of what she does. So I would have to agree at the end of the day. Don't agree with the phrasing, but I agree with the message. And we're kind of like going back and forth between the two group scenes. We did that a little bit later as well, which I kind of like, because it's happening. It's real. Like, we're getting two different events, two different group scenes, and we get to see both. So I don't mind that. And they're both, at the end of the day, discussing the whole GUERDY thing and why GUERDY left so upset. And I typically, when things are happening like this, because at this point they're just kind of speculating. So the only things that I can really listen for are people that are being compassionate and saying, well, it may be something, so let's just wait and see, which was Alexia, so I appreciate it. And then I'm also looking for B, is anybody being super weird about it. Like, I understand not having the information and feeling some type of way about it, but I'm always looking to see if somebody going to take it too far and be an asshole. So that will be the LARSA. Just the way that LARSA communicates is off-putting to me and abrasive, as GUERDY put it a little bit later. And so she naturally is just so very pushy. And like, LARSA, when she communicates to me, she feels like she's communicating as if people owe her answers and owe her explanations, but they have to be the explanations and the answers that she thinks that they are. So she tends to cut people off as well. I just don't enjoy conversations with LARSA. So, obviously when she's having conversations about it, she's like, I don't know what her issue is. She's just so snappy about it, as opposed to just calmly saying, I don't know what the issue is, we'll have to see. But I guess her excuse for being so snappy is, well, GUERDY was talking about me on social media. But it's like, girl, the whole entire world talks about you on social media. You're a key, so shut up and get over it. Like, it kind of feels like she's just doing this for TV's sake, because it's like, if what GUERDY said about you is what really lights a fire under your ass, I'm curious to see how you act with what people have been saying about you for about a decade. Speaking of LARSA, we move on. I got a lot of LARSA this episode that I just did not need. I apologize to any LARSA fans, but this is going to be a recurring thing for me. Like, I will say I don't really care for LARSA's personality, but I'm not biased on it in the review. I'm willing to review whatever is important, but that being said, nothing as it pertains to her and Marcus Jordan is important to me, so I just don't care about that. We move on, and Lisa's in her car and she's on her way to her hearing. I said last episode I can't really dive into the legal storyline, just because there's only so much you can get with the legal storyline. Like, you can't really know things as they're happening necessarily. You don't really know until the end of it, right? Because it's legal and a lot of it is confidential and they can't talk about it and, whatever. And so I don't really dive into that, but I did think it was interesting hearing her explain the temporary child support thing in the middle of the divorce, because I feel like a lot of people don't know that information. I actually did family law when I first started practicing, so what she was saying was correct. Not that it's like super hard to understand, but I do appreciate that she did understand and she was articulating it correctly. So it was nice to hear her explain it and understand what the hell is going on in her process. And I think that viewers can be able to listen to that and say like, oh, they learned something new. So that works for me. Like, I don't mind that as a storyline. My thing is, though, not to count anybody's pockets, but I'm wondering with the way that it's being edited, because we get a lot of Lisa saying like, well, he has all this money, so why wouldn't he want to set me and the kids up? In general, I definitely understand that on the surface, but I'm wondering, this is just me speculating because this is a TV show. I'm wondering if it'll ever come off as maybe Lisa is kind of being blind to the fact that she's trying to do a money grab. I don't know, right? Like, I would have to know how much money Lenny actually has for me to form an opinion as to like, oh, well, Lisa's asking for too much money. She definitely deserves child support. She definitely deserves some type of financial compensation. But what I'm saying is, I'm wondering if we're going to get any information as to like what she's asking for and the reasonableness of that. I wonder if that's going to play into it. I think that'd be interesting, but I don't know if that's a piece of it. Maybe we're just listening to her speak. But I'm assuming that it feels like they're showing a lot of footage of her saying, he should set me up, like he should give me this, he should give me this, and then they're showing specifically that she's getting $8,000 in the temporary support, so it's not the permanent support number, but for right now, or that time, she was getting $8,000 a month in child support. I don't know if that's too much or too little, you know what I'm saying, because I don't know how much money Lenny has. And so that's why I'm just wondering, like, is this an editing thing? Are they trying to say she's getting too much, or are they just giving us the information and letting us do with it what we want to do with it? That's just my curiosity. In terms of story, right? Because I just feel like I said last episode, where is this legal story going to go, right? Because it really only has a beginning and an end. In the interim, we don't really get any information, you know what I'm saying? So how does the divorce and the child support thing end up? Okay, cool. I don't really have a say on that, right? So for story purposes, I'm just wondering, like, what is the audience supposed to be taking and discussing from this? Like, I feel like if you show me something on the show, it's supposed to be polarizing and give us something to talk about as an audience, especially in the age of social media and the Twitter, like live tweeting. So I'm just wondering, what conversation is this supposed to make us have? That's all. We're getting now the view of the back and forth again, and we're getting the separate parties. So we're at, Mary Saul's gay brunch, and we are at, the happy hour, I believe it was, that Nicole was throwing for GUERDY. And so both parties look fun. They both had a nice group of people. They come in, and the first important thing is that, Lisa brings up, now Lisa's on the other side of the group, Lisa brings up to Alexia that on their way out, when they were leaving the building from the party, they saw Todd. I guess he was downstairs hiding out in the gym, which he told us a little bit later in the episode. And she said he was looking low, like he seemed low, like, I guess something was wrong. So she's asking Alexia, like, is everything okay? And Alexia just swears up and down that everything is fine. And even Lisa's like, well, you brought up the divorce thing. And Alexia feels like, she's like, because that's what you guys were going to be thinking. I'm like, I don't think anybody was going to be thinking that. So, I definitely think that she is projecting because they're having issues. And so that showed. And then we switched back over to the other group at their happy hour, and Adriana's saying the same thing. She's like, yeah, I ran into Todd on my way out, and what I did like was her saying, I apologized to him if I had done anything to him inadvertently to affect him, but he told me that I hadn't done anything. So I like that self-awareness and that attention to, like, maybe I did something. Maybe that's why he didn't show up. So let me at least apologize. I couldn't think of what she may have done. To be honest, I just don't remember. But, I still appreciate the apology. But then what was interesting was the fact that this just felt like it didn't have enough context to me. For whatever reason, she comes out and says to him, like, where there's going to have to be some work that you guys do on your marriage, essentially. And he's like, yeah, that you got it. You hit it right on the nose. Like, that's what she keeps saying. He said, you got it. You hit it right on the nose. And everybody's gagging like, oh. And she's like, yeah, so there's trouble in paradise. So that, again, I don't feel like I had more context. I feel like there had to have been more to that conversation. I doubt that she was like, I'm so sorry. And he was like, you're good. And she's like, well, work on your marriage. And he's like, oh, you're right. And then they headed out the door to the Uber. I just don't think that's how it went. So I'm confused. And then hearing Adriana say it that way, maybe it was edited that way, seeing it pieced together that way, and her saying, yeah, so there's trouble in paradise. It does seem like she finds joy a little bit in the fact that there's an issue with Alexia and Todd. And I like Adriana, so from the outset, I would have to say that I would be team Adriana in this anyway. But it does seem weird the way that it was placed in the episode. Back at the other party, the gay brunch, I'm not going to be able to stop saying that because that's just such a ridiculous name to me. Please don't push that forward. Don't ever use that. But, gay brunch, and they're sitting at the table, and Marcus calls Larsa. And it's clear that the ladies care just as little as I do. And they're just like rolling their eyes. And Lisa's like, they're so annoying. And Larsa's talking about having a coming back party on Tuesday. And the man has only been gone for about a week. And they see each other all the time. They damn near live together. And I've already talked about this way too much. It's just, ugh. But I did like that Kiki got a cute Kiki in, and she was just like, girl, it's okay to be away from your man for a little bit. Like, you're 50, you can take it. And it's just like, yeah, like, I want to let them be happy because I get like being in a relationship and being in that honeymoon phase. Like my man. And this is the first time he's on the show. So maybe she's just like, ooh, even at Bravo like they kept posting so many pictures together. And I'm just like, it's just giving like, give me attention. So I get it, but it feels very like high school, like look at me and my man holding hands in between classes, and it's like, girl, you are big and grown, like please shut the hell up. Even having that type of conversation with him where it's just like, I'm obsessed with you, it's just like, ew. Kiki falls in and we get a nice little switch up because this episode was just giving me samesies. Let's talk about GUERDY, and let's talk about Todd, and then let's talk about Larsa and Marcus. I'm like, oh my god, please let's do something else. So GUERDY switches us up a little bit and she's like, Lisa, I love you, but it's like, it feels like, is the man's name Jody? Whatever Lisa's man's name is, it feels like he might be a rebound. And I'm like, oh, I'm so glad somebody said it. Because I'm just wondering, like, and what I was saying, what I mentioned earlier was, it's off-putting to me the way that Lisa explains it. I understand what she's saying, but it sounds weird to me when she's like, well, I've never been loved like this before. And she said, Jody's literally obsessed with me. And I'm just like, I don't find those to be flattering explanations of your relationship. We all communicate differently, and Jody may not have an issue with it at all. But if somebody comes to me that's still married, going through a divorce, still going through some turmoil with their ex, rightfully so, and they're like, but I've got this man and he's obsessed with me, baby, he loves the hell out of me, like he loves me like crazy, he'd do anything for me, I'm gonna be thinking like, oh, so you're with him kind of as like a rebound, like you're getting fed in ways that you haven't been fed before. And I'm not saying that's a negative thing, but I'm just wondering, how invested are you in that person? You're invested in the relationship because you're receiving the benefits, but how invested are you in that person? Like, is Lisa filling Jody up the way that he's filling her up? That's the only thing. Like, it's just off-putting and it's weird to me. Now we're back to the other ladies, and when they first got there, Adriana tried to ask GUERDY, like, so what was your tea at the party? But she's like, whoa, girl, we just sat down. So, after they kiki a little bit, we come back down. Nicole's like, no, but really, girl, like, what was the tea? GUERDY starts to explain, which I like that she gave this context and didn't just jump into it, because it shows that she did, because I kind of went in on Larsa for her last episode, so it shows that she shared that same sentiment. She's like, I'm on my way out the door and Larsa's back like barking at me and trying to have this conversation and being abrasive and being aggressive. And I'm just like, yeah, exactly. And she's like, essentially, I just couldn't take it at that time. And finally, she's like, I'll just come out and say it. And she, she lets them know she has breast cancer. And they have a very like endearing moment. And I really catch myself looking at them in different ways. Like, I'm looking at Julia because she obviously just dealt with that with her wife. And I'm looking at Nicole because she's a physician. I forget what kind. I think she's an anesthesiologist, right? So I'm kind of just looking at her, like, because I feel like she's probably thinking of it from a medical standpoint. Like, she sees stuff like this all the time. So it's sad in a personal stance, but also in a professional thing, she sees illness a lot, probably. So I could be wrong, but that's just what I was thinking as I'm watching. And then from Adriana, I'm really seeing Adriana stressing to her, like, you have friends, we're here for you, focus on yourself. So I'm liking those different perspectives, and it was interesting to feel those different types of empathy during this conversation. But I like after the fact that, after they get all that out and they have their sad moments, you can tell that GUERDY doesn't really want to sit in it and be sad, and she started talking about the chemo, but she really didn't want to talk about it. And so I like that she started making jokes like, oh, well, I have the perfect breast and blah 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 after that. So it lightened the mood, and I think that it's going to create a good space space and a safe space like GUERDY wants for them to be able to talk about it going forward. She's going to have her highs and she's going to have her lows. And I like that they've already set that standard for them to have those conversations. We move on and we're getting, I kind of didn't expect to see this, but we get a dinner with Alexia and Todd. Feels like Alexia's dancing around things with Todd because she kind of opens up the conversation. She's kind of making it about the ladies though, but she's like, I'm trying to explain this to the ladies, but like I've been going through a lot, so my patience is a little low. So I think that I like this again. It's only episode 2, but I can tell that Alexia is being intentional with the way that she approaches things this season, and I can really stand that. I love that. What I don't love is it feels like she is allowing Todd to just do whatever he wants. Whenever you hear those boilerplate phrases from men where it's just like, that's just who I am, that's just how I am, which is what Todd was doing, and she's just like, well, you know, I didn't like it, but I'm gonna support him. I don't love that because you can tell that Alexia doesn't love it. It's all in the body language, and you can tell she felt very uncomfortable and shut down in that conversation because she seems to be a very communicative person. And so I think she was trying to have a conversation about that. And even though they weren't going to, I think she knew they weren't going to agree on what happened, but she at least wants to touch base and have him understand her perspective and you know, vice versa. But he really was more so like, this is my perspective. It just kind of is what it is. Like, I didn't want to be around those people, like whatever. And so I feel like from her body language, she felt shut down. And I don't think she got to release what she wanted to release. And it's evident that she's not comfortable releasing it with her friend group either. So that worries me. Like, where does she get the release here? And so I don't really like that. Finally, we get a link up between GUERDY and LARSA. I guess LARSA had called GUERDY after the party, and she's like, I want to make sure we're good. And she did sit down on a, you know, initial good note, and she's like, you know, obviously the party put us in spirits to move forward, and that's why I reached out to you separately. And GUERDY's like, great, I appreciate that. So it seems like it's gonna go well, but that was extremely short-lived. And GUERDY's like, yeah, so like GUERDY's also communicative, and she for me, she's not super wordy, but she does talk super fast, so I think she fits a lot of words in there. But everything she says is always very well thought out and very substantive, in my opinion. And she's kind of laying out the framework of the type of conversation she wants to have to move forward with LARSA. And LARSA's like, okay, great, but can we not cry? And that turns GUERDY off because she's like, well, girl, like, I mean, we're here to have a vulnerable moment. I can do whatever I want to do. Like, why would you say that and kind of set that tone and shut that down? Like, why would you try to manipulate that portion of the conversation? So I didn't like that either. And it automatically feels like LARSA's on prove a point mode. And she's just like, well, you know, I was trying to talk to you at the event. And GUERDY's like, in my opinion, the event wasn't the right place to do it. And GUERDY cuts her off and she's like, so social media is? And I mean, it's not a bad point, but I like that GUERDY was like, but girl, like, you're really making a big deal about this. Like, that wasn't that big of a deal. And you live in this just like, it's like you live in this big entourage world. Like, everything for you is about social media, which is so incredibly true. So I love that she clocked that for LARSA. The whole time LARSA is just being very like, I don't even have the greatest word for it. She's just very like chirpy and very like jumpy and very just like like every little space of like pause and quiet and punctuation in somebody else's statement, she's gonna jump in and she's gonna try to get a point in and she's gonna try to be right. Like, it's so agitating. I can only imagine being in a conversation with LARSA. Listening to LARSA attempt to have a conversation with somebody makes my skin crawl. You can tell that she's one of those people that isn't listening to listen, and she's listening to respond. She's barely even listening to respond. She's just waiting to respond. She's barely waiting. Like, she just wants to get her words in, and it's always the same point. It's one of those people that don't really move forward past anything. LARSA's going to repeat her same point over and over again just until you agree. Like, you're going to be giving context. You're going to give reasons. You're going to say, well, this is where I am, and I'm trying to move forward. And she's going to say, but you call me fake. 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 That's how LARSA communicates, and it's exhausting. I like that GUERDY is telling her, like, girl, you're shutting me down. I'm sitting here trying to have this conversation. Like, you won't even listen. And LARSA very rudely is like, because maybe you say too much, just like get to the point. And it's like, it's not that she says too much. You just want to hear her say that you're right. And you're not right. I like that GUERDY was able to take a step back and not get into the heat with LARSA. And she's like, LARSA, I just wish that you would create more of a safe space for me to be vulnerable with you and like be patient with me. And obviously she gets emotional and she's crying. And but then Larsa's like, why are you crying? She's like, do you want me to cry too? Like, why are you crying? So obviously that puts GUERDY in a space where she's like, I'm done and I'm ready to leave. And I feel her. Like, that's just an impossible conversation to have with anybody that's taking that approach. And Larsa just does not grow, and she's not realizing that this is the same exact thing that GUERDY's talking about. Like, this is the type of reaction and interaction and treatment that you give her that she's talking about is why you guys are here. And you're not even smart enough to hear that. So I don't see it going anywhere. I can definitely imagine that they're going to have another conversation about it. And it does feel like, you know, Larsa has had times where she can sit down and be quiet for about 3 minutes and hear somebody else's point and be like, okay, fine, let's move forward. But I don't know how genuine it is. You know what I'm saying? Because she's still very much so, I'm Larsa, I'm standing in my points, I'm right about everything. She's a weirdo. So, you know, we'll see what happens. You know, the episode was okay. I will give it like a 7 out of 10. But, you know, it definitely was giving same point, same point, same point, beat the dead horse. But, you know, we'll see what happens in the next one. Bye.